I never thought it could happen to me. That's the dangerous part about stories like this. You hear the phrase human trafficking, and your mind goes somewhere far away. Dark warehouses, chains, kidnappings in foreign countries, people snatched off sidewalks by strangers in white vans. You never picture a clean-cut man with a warm smile and patient eyes. You never picture someone who remembers how you like your coffee, asks about your dreams, and says all the right things when your world feels like it's falling apart. But that's exactly how it started for me. And if I hadn't gotten out when I did, I honestly don't know if I'd still be here telling this story. It began during one of the lowest seasons of my life. I was 23, living in a new city, working part-time at a clothing store in a shopping plaza that always looked busier than it actually was. On the outside, I was functioning. I showed up to work. I paid my bills, barely. I smiled when customers came in and asked if they needed help finding a size. But inside, I was unraveling. I had just gotten out of a relationship that left me feeling hollow. My family was back home, and I had been too proud to tell them how isolated I really was. My rent was late more than once. My car made a grinding sound every time I turned left. I was surviving, but only just. That's when I met him. His name was Adrian. The first time I saw him, he came into the store 10 minutes before closing, dressed like the kind of man who had his life together. Tailored coat, expensive watch, clean shoes, confident but not arrogant. He wasn't the loud type. He was calm, intentional. The kind of man who made you feel like he noticed everything without making you uncomfortable. He bought a jacket he didn't seem to need, and while I rang him up, he made conversation that felt strangely easy. Not flirty, not at first, just interested. He asked if I liked working there, asked if I was from the city, asked what I wanted to do long term. And when I laughed and said I was still trying to figure that out, he said something that stuck with me. Most people never do. At least you're honest. That should have been nothing, a passing comment. But when you feel unseen for long enough, even small attention lands differently. Over the next few weeks, he kept showing up, always casually, always with a reason. Sometimes he'd stop by for coffee at the cafe next door and wave if he saw me through the window. Sometimes he'd come in and ask about something simple, like whether a certain shirt came in another color. It never felt forced. Looking back, I realize it was all designed to feel natural. That's what the lover boy method is. It doesn't begin with force, it begins with trust. He learned my schedule without ever asking directly. He knew when I took my lunch break. He remembered details about my life I'd forgotten mentioning. One day I told him my car was acting up, and the next time I saw him, he brought me the number of a mechanic his cousin trusted. Another time I mentioned I'd skipped lunch, and an hour later he walked back in with food from a place I'd once said I liked. No one had cared for me like that in a long time. And that's how we got in. A month later, we were officially dating. At least, that's what I thought. Adrian moved with an almost unsettling patience. He never pushed too hard, never too fast. He didn't ask for anything outrageous. He just kept showing up as the solution to every problem I had. When my landlord threatened a late fee, Adrian covered it. When my car finally died in a grocery store parking lot, Adrian appeared within 20 minutes and paid for the tow truck without making me feel guilty. When I broke down crying one night over how stuck I felt, he pulled me into his chest and said, "You're not stuck. You just haven't had the right person beside you." I believed him. That was the twist I didn't see coming. I thought trafficking looked like violence first. But sometimes, It looks like rescue. A few months in, Adrian started talking about opportunities. He told me I was too smart and too beautiful to be struggling the way I was. He said he had friends in events, nightlife, hospitality, people who could connect me to better money. Nothing dirty, he said, just hostess work, private parties, upscale settings, wealthy clients. Smiling, socializing, making people feel welcome. I told him that didn't sound like me. He laughed softly and said, "That's because you're still thinking small." That phrase started showing up more and more. You're thinking small. At first, it sounded motivating. Then it started sounding like correction. He took me shopping one weekend and bought clothes I normally would have said were too revealing. When I hesitated, he kissed my forehead and said, "Trust me, you look powerful." He started encouraging me to distance myself from people he said were draining me. My coworker Tasha? Jealous. My cousin who called and asked if I was okay? Controlling. My mom who said I didn't sound like myself lately? She doesn't want to see you grow. Every warning became evidence, in his mind, that other people wanted to hold me back. And slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, I started choosing him over everyone else. That was another twist. He didn't isolate me by demanding it. He isolated me by making everyone else seem unsafe. The first real crack in the mask came one Friday night. He invited me to what he called a private networking event at a luxury condo downtown. He said it was the kind of place where one good impression could change my entire life. I remember standing in front of the mirror, fixing an earring, feeling nervous but hopeful. Adrian stood behind me, hands on my shoulders, smiling into the glass. "This is the start of something bigger for you," he said. The condo was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows, music low enough for conversation, a view of the city that made everything below feel distant and unreal. But almost immediately, something felt wrong. There were other girls there, all around my age, some younger, maybe barely 20, all dressed beautifully. But there was something tense in the way they carried themselves. Their smiles looked rehearsed. Their laughter came a second too late, like a cue they'd learned to follow. One of them caught my eye from across the room, just for a second. And in that second, I saw it. Fear. Not the kind you can explain away as shyness, real fear. I asked Adrian who the girls were, and he brushed it off. Some are models, some host, some entertain clients. Don't overthink it. Then he introduced me to two older men as someone special. I still remember the way that phrase made my stomach turn. Not my girlfriend, not someone I care about, just someone special. As if I were a product being previewed. I smiled through the conversation, but inside, alarms were going off. One of the men asked if I traveled. The other asked whether I was open-minded. Adrian answered before I could. She's learning. That night, I told him I didn't want to go to anything like that again. For the first time, I saw the softness leave his face. Not completely, just enough. His jaw tightened. His voice went quiet in a way that was somehow more threatening than yelling. He reminded me of everything he'd done for me. The rent, the car, the clothes, the dinners, the support. He said I was acting ungrateful. Said all he ever tried to do was elevate my life. Then he apologized. That was another twist. Every time he pushed too far, he knew exactly how to pull back just enough to keep me from leaving. After that, the pattern changed. He started disappearing for hours, then days, only to return affectionate and generous. He'd send me money unexpectedly, then question how I spent it. He'd tell me I was different from other girls, then compare me to women who were more loyal and understood the lifestyle. The word lifestyle started showing up too, a word vague enough to hide almost anything. One night, I was at his apartment while he showered, and his phone buzzed on the counter. I wasn't trying to snoop, at least not at first, but the screen lit up with a message that made my blood run cold. Did the new girl agree yet? New girl. That was me. I picked up the phone with shaking hands. There were dozens of messages. Photos of women, hotel names, flight confirmations, conversations about percentages, men asking for availability. One message included my first name. Another included a photo Adrian had taken of me at dinner 2 weeks earlier. One I didn't know he'd sent to anyone. I couldn't breathe. I put the phone back exactly where it was and sat on the couch pretending nothing had happened. But everything inside me had changed.